r/ask Reddit. Which propaganda effort was so successful that people still believe in it today? That low-fat products are healthy. In the 80s there was a huge push toward low-fat products due to some hackneyed propaganda science, which resulted in a deluge of low-fat high-sugar food products to be produced en masse. This trend is now singled out as one of the biggest factors that triggered the obesity diabetic epidemic across the US and elsewhere. When I had gestational diabetes, the endocrinology nurse kept pushing the low-fat dairy foods. It made me want to scream. The worst option for someone with diabetes. Not her fault. It's what the government decides to push, but I'm sure many of the other women there would have taken her advice and then struggled to keep their blood sugar levels down. So true. I am a type 1 diabetic, and a lot of doctors tell you need to have over 200 carbs a day. You know how hard it is to control blood sugar with a diet like that? Type 1 is difficult to manage. Sometimes you can do everything right and sugars just go crazy. Anything to do with diamonds or the amount of money that needs to be spent on an engagement ring. I bought my wife a $30 cubic zirconia engagement ring because I was broke as a joke at the time, and her wedding ring is a family heirloom. My band is a plain $120 gold-plated ring she bought with her bonus. I asked her to keep it under $100, but she loved it and I can't be mad at her. Unless you just want to, I would never recommend spending the year's salary or whatever it is on a ring that may or may not get lost in the future. Fellas, if she gets genuinely upset if you don't spend enough on her ring, she ain't the one. If the ring's the problem, the ring's not the problem. Honestly, the whole wedding industry. Yup, wife and I went with small rings with designs we liked. Sapphire rather than diamond. Mine and hers plus engagement ring only cost us around $900. Then our wedding was a small and intimate thing at a nice restaurant with only immediate family present. The minister came and had dinner with us. Only about 15 people. Worth it. Had the night of my life. Highly recommend. The USDA food pyramid. It was built with the help of ancient aliens. Or lobbyists. The fact that carrots mail good eyesight. This was a lie propagated by MI6, or its parent agencies, during World War II, to hide the fact that the Brits had very good and operational radar. They told the public that the pilots could see in the dark well because their eyes were made stronger by the carrots they ate. This isn't true, although I wish it was because it's actually more exciting than the real reason. The propaganda effort was to get people to grow their own vegetables during the war when supplies were low, with carrots being seen as something cheap and plentiful that could be easily grown in an allotment. Also, it's not a lie per se and is roughly based in science. Carrots contain vitamin A, and one of the symptoms of vitamin A deficiency is poor eyesight. Your eyesight would probably not be affected if you stopped eating carrots. However, source: I'm British. Just read today that donations made to the Breast Cancer Association with the pink ribbon go largely to fund advertising, merchandise, and higher-ups at the association. They regularly deny funding to those with breast cancer and hardly donate to cure efforts from what I read. Total propaganda. Yeah, Pink Ribbon is a pretty shitty charity from what I've read. I don't really support any big charities anymore. I'll much rather donate to something local when they are raising money for a specific purpose so you can see where the money goes. That having the light on in the car is illegal, stop it, mom. It may not be illegal, but it will mess with the driver's night vision. I don't have great night vision, and my kids have convinced themselves that if they turn a light on in the car even for a second, I'll immediately careen off a cliff and kill all of us. Napoleon was of average height, yet we still talk about short men having a Napoleon complex. British intelligence took some film of Hitler walking and manipulated it to make it look like he was doing an insane jig. Brits also put out a rumor that their pilots ate a lot of carrots. The carrots were supposed to be the reason the RAF shot down so many German fighters at night. The real thing was radar. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion was written by a Tsarist officer to justify rioting against the Jews. Book is still being cited by anti-Semites. So you are gonna tell me that there's a video of Hitler doing an insane jig, but you are not gonna give me a link? It wasn't manipulated, it was a still that was taken the same time as a film, outside of the rail car that Germans had been forced to surrender in after World War I in Versailles. Hitler is happy, so he lifts his foot to his knee and drops it. On film it looks like he's just being exuberant, but as a still he looks like a dork. Then the natives taught everyone to grow corn and they lived happily ever after the end. Or as the Indians called it, maize. That the McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit was utterly frivolous. I wonder why media conglomerates and corporate interest might have wanted people to not believe in basically their most effective tool for seeking justice against much larger entities. She initially requested that McDonald's pay her medical bills only. They refused. I believe the original verdict was 1 day of coffee sales nationwide. Then they appealed and got it reduced to only 1 day coffee sales from the state, maybe NM. Probably could have looked it up and given accurate info, but that wouldn't be any fun. You left out that they didn't refuse. They offered to pay $500 to when her bills were well into the tens of thousands, not to mention all the work her daughter wasn't doing while taking care of her. Yup, one good look at the pictures of the burns and a short explanation of what actually happened cured me of that one. That we need to fixate on our fear of terrorism to the point of sacrificing all out privacy. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Benjamin Franklin. Yeah, right. The real question is, when will security go back to normal? When is the state of emergency over? Declaring war on an abstract noun does wonders for perpetuating war. That you should spend 1 or 2 months' salary on a wedding ring. Propagated by the diamond industry. I thought it was 3-6 months now. Last check it was 9 months and your firstborn or 69 months. Really? How incredibly foolish is that? Expecting newlyweds to become indebted at the beginning of their marriage. That vaccines cause autism. Autism seems to happen because the first symptoms of it show themselves around the same time most children are getting their first vaccinations. It's so dumb because the paper originally discussing it has been debunked for over 20 years and people still refuse to fact check it. Yeah, but the government is actually controlling the internet and paying off scientists to stop the truth from getting out. I know because someone on my Facebook mom group said it, which is much more reliable than a real doctor because Lindsay isn't getting paid by the government. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Your first meal of the day, regardless of time, is your breakfast meal. TBH, if I don't eat something before I start doing stuff for the day, I feel like I'm on death's door. I know many people who feel the same. I am the opposite, so it just depends on the person. My parents almost force-fed me breakfast, and I hated it with a passion. Detoxes, all of them. Taking a dump and having a leak are your body's mechanisms for removing unwanted materials, and they work very well left on their own. It's expensive diarrhea. If you want it that badly, just eat a habanero. The satanic panic with Dungeons and Dragons. There are still super religious parents who believe it will summon the devil if your kid plays. Unless he's going to play a healer, I'm not really interested. And my aunt. We're pretending to kill a Duckine cave filled with goblins that kidnapped our friend, not creating a ritual for the demon Susan. Nixon-Reagan era anti-drug propaganda, especially against weed and psychedelic drugs. I remember my psych teacher in 10th grade who was a teenager during the 70s, and since the man kept pushing how weed was just as bad, or worse, than harder and more dangerous drugs, a lot of the classmates she grew up with ended up overdosing. BC their rationale was, I do plenty of weed and nothing bad ever happens, so doing a lot of this drug won't do anything either. BC the government clearly lies. This was also the problem with the DARE program in the 90s. The food pyramid. Who needs 8-11 servings of carbs? If you base your diet on that pyramid, you'll look like that pyramid. That diamonds are rare. So you're saying that Minecraft is just a bunch of bullshit? No, Minecraft is facts. Not really a propaganda effort, but in South Korea lots of people think that leaving a fan on overnight while you sleep can kill you. The government just wanted people to stop wasting energy. That we swallow an average of 12 spiders a year in our sleep. It was published as an example of how people will believe anything they read. The next day there was a retraction printed explaining the study. No one remembers the retraction. IDKI would swallow Spider-Man. It wasn't the norm in America for women to shave their legs until the 1940s-50s. Razor companies like Gillette capitalized on rising hemlines and the shortage of nylon for stockings during World War II and began to make ads that implied leg hair was unsightly and that women should use their new safe razors to rid themselves of it. Kinda crazy how that's still expected to this day. Kind of genius on their part too. Similar to Revlon and nail polish, lots of beauty standards are simply marketing propaganda. The $1 million McDonald's coffee lawsuit. People think this woman sued and won all because she spilt her own coffee. In reality, McDonald's was serving their coffee at over 100 degrees and she had to get surgery because her genitals and thighs fused together. Bad breath prevention products. Before Listerine was a mouthwash, it was marketed as a house cleaner. Then the people selling it said people who don't use it have halitosis and that if they don't use Listerine, people will hate them. To go green. Edit. Or the anti-litter campaign. Drinks used to be in glass bottles, which would be returned to the factories and reused. To save money, these large factories switched to one-use cans, which in turn, of course, created more waste. People started to blame the companies, because obviously if they switched back to glass then that would reduce the waste. But instead of doing that, these large companies created the Go Green campaign in order to turn the blame on the consumers instead of the factories themselves. Recycle, recycle, clean up after yourselves, etc. I'm not saying not to put effort into reducing waste. It's a huge problem. But it's just interesting to know the origin and how many businesses, and surprisingly, are selfish and only care about making a dime, despite the toll it takes. Yep, industry causes so much waste and CO2 to the point it's almost useless for consumers to actually make a dent by cleaning up after themselves. Luckily for us, though, companies are made up of people. Hopefully the more these attitudes sink into the average person, the more companies will be influenced to actually do something. Blueberries being a superfood. Anything being called a superfood. I just ate 4 boxes of Pocky. It's a ducking superfood. White Jesus. That the Battle of Kadesh had a clear winner. The New Kingdom of Egypt and the Hittite Empire were engaged in a war over what is now Syria. Their forces met at Kadesh and fought to a stalemate, resulting in a white peace. Upon returning to Egypt, Pharaoh Ramesses II and his generals bragged about their victory. Monuments, statues and tombs were built to honor Egypt's great victory, this being over 3,000 years before the internet. Everyone who wasn't at the battle just kind of believed him. The Hittite narrative was that Ramesses was overrun and retreated back to Egypt. Again, nobody on their side questioned it. You wouldn't be able to get away with it in 2019. But people in both states believed their side had won an epic battle and routed the enemy when really it was a draw. Lemmings. Lemmings are not suicidal creatures. This was propaganda created by Disney for a faux documentary made in the 50s. That undercover police officers have to admit they are a cop if asked. Otherwise they are guilty of entrapment. Not true and never has been true. Police are 100% allowed to lie to criminals before they are arrested, if it helps them catch bad guys. But police love this myth because it gives a false sense of security to dumb crims and thus makes their job easier. Perp. Are you a cop? Undercover cop? Or damn got me bro? Message being harmful for you. It was literal nonsense spread to smear the Chinese in the 1950s. It's political propaganda that even endures to this day where people complain message gives them headaches, which is absolutely impossible. Spinach makes you stronger. If I recall correctly, there was a miscalculation of the amount of iron contained in spinach. Spinach does contain a steroid in it, but you'd have to eat 4 kilograms of it before you see actual effects. Absinthe being poisonous, psychoactive, and or hallucinogenic. Hep was in a bar in Ireland that served authentic absinthe, asked the bartender if it would make us trip, and he said, well, yeah, if you drink enough of it. Fast forward, my buddy is decorating the curb with the contents of his stomach and I paid for his trip home. That we only use 10% of our brains. It isn't propaganda, but Coke advertised Santa as being red but he's actually green-blue. Edit. I have made a mistake. Clearly Santa is a communist making him red. He distributes toys for free. Sounds pretty socialist to me. Just saying. If it acts red, maybe it is red. Korean fan death. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.